Welcome, everyone, to the WION podcast. We're doing a quick deep dive today into something pretty specific, a recent discovery that's definitely raising some eyebrows.
That's right. It involves something really tiny, but it could have a surprisingly big impact.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It started with a black bear.
It did. Out in Pennsylvania, scientists were examining a wild black bear and found these parasitic worms in its eyes.
In its eyes. Okay, that's immediately attention-grabbing.
Definitely. Now, finding parasites in wildlife isn't, totally unheard of, but these worms were different.
How so?
Well, they're really small, less than 2 centimeters, and it's the first time this specific type of eyeworm has been confirmed in a wild animal here in the U.S.
Okay, so up first, and you said eyeworms. Do they cause problems?
They certainly can. They're from the genus Thalasia, and they cause a condition called thalasia.
Thalasiosis, right?
Yeah, it affects the eyes, obviously. Causes irritation, inflammation, sometimes, in bad cases, even blindness.
And have we seen these Thalasia worms before? Maybe in pets?
We've seen related types, yes, in dogs and cats sometimes. But this specific one, Thalasia californiensis, showing up in a wild U.S. black bear, that's new.
Okay, so how does it get around? From a bear to potentially other animals or even us?
That's the really interesting part. It needs help. It uses flies as a vector.
Flies? Like house flies?
Certain kinds, flies that are attracted to, well, the moisture around mammals' eyes, tears, secretions, that sort of thing.
Okay.
So a fly lands on an infected bear's eye, maybe feeds on the tears, and it picks up the worm larva. Tiny microscopic larvae.
Right. So the fly isn't just annoying, it's actually transporting the parasite.
Exactly. Like a taxi service, as you put it before we started. The larvae develop a bit inside the fly.
Yeah.
Then when that same fly lands near the eye of another animal, could be another bear, could be a dog wandering nearby, could even be a person.
Oh, wow.
The larvae actually move out of the fly's mouth parts and onto the new host's eye, and then they grow into adult worms there.
That is quite a journey. And finding this in a black bear specifically, what does that suggest? Bears cover a lot of ground.
That's a really key point. It suggests that bears, maybe other large wildlife too, could be acting as a reservoir for this parasite in the environment.
A reservoir, meaning like a long-term host where the parasite can just live and reproduce.
Precisely. The bear might not even be severely ill from it, but it carries the worms, keeping the parasite population going.
And because the bear moves around, it potentially spreads the source of the infection over a wider area.
That's the implication, yes. So flies in that wider area can then pick up the larvae from the bear.
And potentially transfer them to pets, or like you said, maybe even people who are hiking or just living in those areas.
Exactly. It highlights a connection we might not have really seen before between wildlife health and, well, the health of domestic animals and even public health.
So something so small, carried by flies, feeding on tears, potentially moving from wildlife like black bears into pets, and possibly even us.
It's a discovery that really highlights how connected we are to the natural world and the surprises it can hold,
Absolutely. It really makes you think about what else might be out there, these kinds of hidden connections. Well, that's all we have time for.
Another deadly scene this morning at an aid line in Gaza. At least 27 Palestinians were killed near a goods distribution site in the southern city of Rafah. More than 90 injured. The third straight day of bloodshed tied to the controversial operation. The Israeli military says troops opened fire after a group approached from outside designated access routes. The Red Cross says 184 people were brought to a nearby field hospital. 27 of them died. The site is run by the U.S.-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, a private aid group endorsed by Israel, but criticized by the United Nations for bypassing traditional relief channels. This comes as Israel expands evacuation orders across southern Gaza with warnings to flee Khan Yunis. The UN says there are no safe zones left in the enclave.
A Reuters poll of analysts has found that Egypt's annual headline inflation is forecast to have increased further in May. State Statistics Agency CAPMAS is expected to release the latest figures on Wednesday, 6 days earlier than usual. This is due to the 3-day Muslim holiday Eid al-Adha, which gets underway at sunset on Thursday. The median forecast of the 12 analysts suggests annual urban consumer inflation will have risen to 14.9% in May, up from 13.9% in April. This is primarily due to an unfavorable base effect, with some residual impact from energy price hikes in mid-April. The increase on a range of fuel products by up to almost 15% was in line with commitments sought by the International Monetary Fund. Annual inflation has plunged from a record high of 38% in September 2023, helped by an $8 billion financial support package signed with the IMF in March 2024.
After 20 hours of manhunt, Pakistan police have arrested the accused in 17-year-old Pakistani social media influencer Sana Yousaf's murder case. The influencer was shot dead at her residence in Islamabad on Monday. The police arrested the accused named Umar after going through 113 camera footage. Umar was arrested from Faisalabad. Now, according to the police, he fled the scene after shooting Yousaf twice. The police have also revealed that the accused committed the crime after Yousaf rejected his repeated attempts to befriend her. Sana Yousaf was a popular TikToker who had roughly over 1 million combined followers on her Instagram and TikTok. Yousaf's death comes at a time when crimes against women have been increasing in Pakistan. In January, a 15-year-old influencer was shot dead by her father for creating content on TikTok.
여러분이 저에게 맡기신 첫 번째 사명, 내란을 확실히 극복하고 다시는 국민이 맡긴 총칼로 국민을 겁박하는 군사 쿠데타는 없게 하는 일. 정치가 이해관계 때문에 다투더라도 정치가 편을 가를지라도 국민은 편을 가를 필요가 없습니다. 국민은 이 나라의 주인이고 정치는 국민들의 삶을 대신 책임지는 일꾼들입니다.
국민의 선택을 겸허하게 받아들이겠습니다. 당선되신 이재명 후보님 축하드립니다. 대한민국은 어떠한 위기에 부딪히더라도 국민의 힘으로 위대한 전진을 계속해 왔습니다.
Sure.
Thank you, Caroline. Two questions, if I can. President Trump got involved himself in presidential election in Poland by supporting a conservative candidate who ultimately won.
Yeah.
What does it mean for the future U.S.-Polish relations? What's likely to change?
Well, I believe the president is obviously pleased to see the result of the Polish elections. He met with Karol Nawrocki, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Yes, Nawrocki. Okay, thank you. I appreciate your insight on that. He met with him at the White House, and he told him, you're going to win because you support common sense. And he supported strong borders in Poland. He supported an end to the woke, radical DEI stuff that we've seen not just here in the United States, but really take over Europe and, frankly, the whole world. He was very outspoken about that. And I was reading the reports about how the Polish people felt about this man, and they felt like he was putting the needs of Poland first. And that's a very refreshing feeling, one that we know very well here in the United States of America. So, as you know, the United States and Poland have always had a very deep and strong relationship, friendship. They're a great ally, and I know the president continues to look forward to working with them.
We have one more on Ukrainian drone attack on Russia. Was President Trump informed in advance by Ukraine that the attack is coming?
He was not. Carrie.
Caroline, so just want to go back to the issue on the anti-Christian bias.
Britain is rearming for a new era of danger. With threats multiplying from Russia to China, London pledges billions for submarines, nukes, cutting-edge weapons. The message is clear. The UK will not be caught unprepared. Take a look at this report.
The war drums are not distant anymore. Britain hears them from the Arctic to the Pacific. Britain is rearming After years of underfunding and strategic drift, the United Kingdom has slammed the brakes on military complacency. In a seismic new strategic defense review, London has declared a full-spectrum military revival, expanding its submarine fleet, boosting troop numbers, and even considering tax hikes to prepare the nation for an era of permanent global confrontation. UK PM says that the efforts would also lead to job creation.
We will defend our homeland by investing in our air and missile defence to better protect these islands. We will create a hybrid Royal Navy, blending drones with warships, submarines and aircraft to patrol the North Atlantic and beyond, supporting thousands of brilliant shipbuilding jobs, including right here in Govan.
A key highlight is the expansion of Britain's nuclear deterrent. Submarine-based Trident systems will be reinforced, and nuclear doctrine is being re-evaluated to include a preemptive retaliatory posture. Additionally, more funds are being channeled into cyber warfare, space command, hypersonic weapon development, and AI-led battlefield systems. The idea is to make the UK Army 10 times more lethal.
But in a more dangerous world, the SDR confirms that we must move to warfighting readiness. Warfighting readiness means stronger deterrence. We need stronger deterrence to avoid the huge costs, human and economic, that wars create. And we prevent wars by being strong enough to fight and win them.
But this transformation comes with a price. Economists warn that tax rises may be unavoidable to fund the billions needed for warfighting readiness. Even as the government promises to raise defense spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2027, as UK PM Keir Starmer warns that the threats UK now faces is more serious, more immediate, and more unpredictable than at any time since the Cold War. This is a nation not preparing for a war it wants, but for the wars it can no longer ignore.
And finally, we end with ongoing layoffs in the tech industry. With fresh job cuts after the 6,000 announced last month, Microsoft's layoff spree seems to be far from over. As the tech giant doubles down on artificial intelligence, hundreds of more employees are being shown the door. This is raising fresh concerns about whether the AI boom is creating more jobs or quietly wiping them out. Here's our report on the unfolding shakeup in Silicon Valley.
Microsoft has laid off over 300 more employees. This comes just weeks after executing one of its largest workforce reductions in years. This continues as a sweeping effort to realign itself in an AI-dominated marketplace. According to a filing with Washington State's Employment Security Department, the tech giant informed over 300 employees that their roles have been eliminated. This comes on top of the 6,000 layoffs announced in May, many of which affected long-serving software engineers and employees deeply embedded in key projects. In a statement, a Microsoft spokesman confirmed the latest round of job cuts.
A layoff announcement.
The spokesperson stated that the jobs represent less than 1% of Microsoft's global workforce. This is a part of the ongoing organizational changes necessary to best position the company for success in a dynamic marketplace. The cuts reflect a broader trend in the tech industry. Companies are tightening their belts even as they invest heavily in artificial intelligence. Microsoft, along with rivals like Meta and Salesforce, has championed AI tools that enhance software development while reducing the need for human coders. The internal deployment of such technologies has allowed firms to slow hiring or reduce staff, citing efficiency gains. According to reports as of June 2024, Microsoft employed roughly 228,000 full-time workers globally, 55% of whom are based out of the United States of America. The latest round of layoffs pushes the total number of Microsoft job losses in Washington state alone to nearly 2,300 in recent weeks. Microsoft isn't the only company that has cut jobs. As per reports, over 62,000 tech jobs have been eliminated across 137 companies in 2025. Google reportedly bid adieu to nearly 200 employees from its global business unit. Amazon has reportedly cut about 27,000 jobs since 2022. Panasonic is also planning to slash over 10,000 roles. IBM has reportedly let go of around 8,000 employees. Online reactions have ranged from economic concern to geopolitical blame. Social media users vented frustration, with many blaming AI and H-1B visas. One user stated that efficiency over expansion is the new trend. Another lamented that recession is already here, while one stated that these job cuts have nothing to do with rate cuts. Microsoft has not specified which departments were most affected in the latest cuts, but industry watchers suspect the trend of targeting of software engineering roles may have continued. As big tech leans further into automation and machine learning, analysts warn that entry-level tech jobs may soon face extinction, unless companies rethink the human role in AI-driven industries.
And now moving to the Middle East, where nuclear tensions are once again flaring, and this time the stakes may be higher than ever. Yesterday, President Trump made a hardline declaration on Iran's nuclear program, ruling out any uranium enrichment under a potential new nuclear agreement. Now, posting on his Truth Social platform, the commander-in-chief wrote, quote, "Under our potential agreement, we will not allow any enrichment or uranium," end quote. President Trump's statement came shortly after Axios reported that the U.S. proposal might allow Tehran limited low-level enrichment, a claim President Trump directly rejected. Now, the latest U.S. proposal, reportedly delivered to Tehran by Omani Foreign Minister, suggests that Iran halt uranium enrichment entirely and consider joining a regional consortium for peaceful nuclear energy development. However, President Trump's envoy to the talks, Steve Witkoff, reaffirmed Washington's position, stating, quote, "An enrichment program can never exist in the state of Iran ever again. That's our red line," end quote.
President Trump has made it clear that Iran can never obtain a nuclear bomb. Special Envoy Witkoff has sent a detailed and acceptable proposal to the Iranian regime, and it's in their best interest to accept it. Out of respect for the ongoing deal, the administration will not comment on details of the proposal to the media.
But despite the renewed push for diplomacy, Iran remains firm in its position. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi dismissed the U.S. offer as unbalanced and unacceptable, warning that no agreement will be reached if Iran's peaceful nuclear activities are curtailed. In fact, even Iran's foreign ministry called a recent report by the United Nations nuclear watchdog on its nuclear activities fully biased and politically motivated.
The content of the report issued by the IAEA is mostly repetitive, and it exaggerates some technical issues. We have no doubt that this report has been prepared under pressure by some certain European countries. Of course, this won't justify preparing a fully biased and politically motivated report against a member country.
Meanwhile, the core sticking points in the negotiations remain unchanged. On one hand, Tehran refuses to stop enrichment entirely or ship out its stockpile of highly enriched uranium, while in return it demands a full lifting of U.S. sanctions, particularly those affecting its vital oil and banking sectors. In fact, according to Iranian sources, Washington's offer lacks a clear roadmap for sanction relief, which is a key Iranian demand. A senior diplomat close to Iran's negotiating team said the current proposal is a non-starter and completely one-sided.
Iran is drafting a negative response to the U.S. proposal, which could be interpreted as a rejection of the U.S. offer. In this proposal, the U.S. stance on enrichment on Iranian soil remains unchanged, and there is no clear explanation regarding the lifting of sanctions.
Meanwhile, Egypt and other regional players have called for de-escalation to prevent further destabilization. Egyptian President al-Sisi praised the diplomatic talks but warned against any military confrontation, a sentiment echoed by his foreign minister, who emphasized the region is already dealing with enough crises. Even Saudi Arabia, behind the scenes, has reportedly urged Tehran to take Washington's offer seriously, viewing it as a possible path to avoid direct conflict with Israel, which continues to regard Iran's nuclear ambitions as an existential threat. Tehran's response to the proposal is expected soon, but with hardened positions, unresolved demands, and regional players watching closely, the key question remains: will diplomacy prevail, or is the region inching toward something far more dangerous.
Iran is weighing a proposal from the United States after negotiations over its rapidly advancing nuclear program. Now, details remain sketchy, but Iranian officials and American officials have said enough for us to kind of get an outline of what's going on. One of the big items is this possible consortium that the Americans have suggested that could enrich low levels of uranium to be used by Iran and other nations in the Persian Gulf region. We're also hearing from the Americans that potentially this would see Iran limited to some 3% enrichment. That's around the same vicinity of the 2015 nuclear deal with world powers that U.S. President Donald Trump unilaterally withdrew America from back in 2018. Now, all this is really dependent on what the Iranians say, and one of the red lines for the Iranians is continuing to enrich uranium inside of Iran. They've said that's a red line, that if that stops, Iran won't agree to a deal. Now, there's some thought that the Americans, from President Trump downward, are saying that Iran must give up all its enrichment facilities, so it remains unclear how they'll square that. But there's also a lot of pressure from the outside as well right now. Western nations and Europe have really started to criticize Iran over the nuclear program, especially because Iran is now enriching uranium up to 60%, which is a short technical step away from weapons-grade levels of 90, and they have enough of a stockpile to build multiple nuclear weapons should Tehran choose to do so. Right now, there's some thought that European nations might move for a censure motion at the Board of Governors at the International Atomic Energy Agency. If that happens, that could kick this all the way back to the UN Security Council. Right now, there's a mechanism in place known as snapback that's from that 2015 deal that allows any of the parties of the deal to declare Iran in non-compliance and immediately reimpose all UN sanctions on Tehran. Iran does not want to see that happen. Its economy is already ailing under American sanctions, and Iran is warning that it could kick out international inspectors or potentially even race for the bomb should this happen.
نفذت القوات الصاروخية في القوات المسلحة اليمنية عملية عسكرية استهدفت مطار اللد في منطقة يافا المحتلة، وذلك بصاروخ باليستي النوع ذي الفقار، وقد حققت العملية هدفها بنجاح بفضل الله، وأجبرت 4 ملايين صهيوني على الهروب إلى الملاجئ ووقف حركة الملاحة في المطار.
European nations are not just supplying offensive weapons to Ukraine, they've also removed any restrictions on use case scenarios. That means Ukraine can strike Russia where it wants and when it wants. Escalation of war in Ukraine poses a threat of expansion of war in Europe, especially those countries that share a border with Russia, who are feeling the heat now. The European arms race has begun. Russia is amping up its defense capabilities to historically high levels. Meanwhile, NATO countries are also increasing their defense spending. The most recent warning came from Germany. German defense chief has warned that Russia might attack NATO in the next 4 years. Citing record production of military equipment by Russia, he said an attack on the Baltic state members could happen as soon as 2029. Latvia's intelligence service has also warned of a deteriorating security situation in Eastern Europe. Latvian intelligence has pointed out at major Russian military buildup in the Baltic Sea. They also say Russia is expanding surveillance activities around NATO military operations in the region. Nordic nations are also ringing the alarm bells. They are preparing their people to defend against military and non-military threats. In May this year, the Norwegian government published its first national security strategy, highlighting the country's most serious security challenge since World War II. In January, Norway started building bomb shelters, resuming a practice that it had halted in 1998. The front line in Ukraine heats up. European countries are mulling over the possibility of what might be Russia's endgame. that is expansion of war into the NATO territory.